In Britain, you can go to prison for handling a fish suspiciously. You can get arrested for being drunk in a pub, and shaking your doormat after 8 a.m. is a criminal offence. These aren't jokes, they're real laws. We found 25 things that are perfectly legal everywhere else, but could land you in court here. You've probably broken 3 of them today. This one sounds like I've made it up, but it's real as day. The Salmon Act 1986 makes it illegal to handle salmon in suspicious circumstances. Not stealing salmon, mind you, just handling it suspiciously. What counts as suspicious? Nobody knows, and that's the beauty of British lawmaking. You could be carrying a salmon through Tesco, and if a copper reckons you look dodgy, technically you're breaking the law. It was meant to crack down on poaching, but it's worded so vaguely that it's become the most mocked law in the country. The fact that this law still exists in 2025 tells you everything about how Parliament works. Nobody can be bothered to repeal it, because that would require someone to stand up in the Commons and have a serious debate about salmon handling, and they'd rather avoid the embarrassment. Meanwhile, law-abiding Brits live in fear that their weekly shop might land them in the dock if they're carrying their fish wrong. Here's one that'll blow your mind. It's illegal to be drunk in a pub. The Licensing Act 1872 makes it an offence to be drunk on licensed premises, which means every Friday and Saturday night, half of Britain is technically breaking the law. The pub's entire business model is getting you pissed, but if you actually succeed, you're a criminal. It's like making it illegal to get wet in a swimming pool. This law gets enforced exactly never, unless you're causing proper trouble, but it sits there on the books waiting to be weaponised whenever some copper or licensing officer fancies it. It represents the British genius for creating laws that criminalise normal behaviour while giving authorities selective enforcement powers. Every bloke who's ever had 4 pints and wobbled to the bar for a 5th is technically a lawbreaker, and that's millions of us. The Metropolitan Police Act of 1839 makes it illegal to shake your doormat in the street after 8 o'clock in the morning, not 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. So if you're an early riser who likes to give the mat a good beating before breakfast, you're bang out of order. After 8 a.m, that mat stays put, or you're risking a fine. It made sense in Victorian London when everyone emptied chamber pots out of windows and the streets were already filthy by mid-morning. But we're not living in Oliver Twist anymore. The law's still active, which means technically every housewife who's given the mat a shake while the postman walks by has committed a crime. Nobody's been nicked for it in living memory. But that's not the point. The point is we've got 19th century laws governing doormat etiquette, while actual crimes go unsolved. That's Britain for you. More worried about when you clean your mat than whether your car gets nicked. The Metropolitan Police Act strikes again. It's illegal to carry a plank along the pavement. Not a weapon, not a dangerous item, just a plank of wood. If you've been to B&Q and bought some timber, congratulations, you're a criminal the moment you set foot on the footpath. The law was meant to stop street traders blocking pavements with goods, but it's worded so broadly that it catches anyone carrying anything remotely plank-shaped. This law's been on the books since 1839, and nobody's bothered repealing it because, like most ridiculous British laws, it's easier to ignore it than fix it. Every builder, every DIY enthusiast, every bloke who's carried a bit of wood home from the shed has broken this law. The fact that we've got laws criminalising basic activities like carrying building materials tells you how disconnected our legal system is from normal life. Fancy flying a kite in the park? Better check the Metropolitan Police Act 1839 first, because it's illegal to fly a kite in any public place if it causes annoyance to other people. Not danger, not obstruction, annoyance. So if some miserable git decides your kite's annoying him, you're technically breaking the law. It's the perfect British crime. Vague, petty, and entirely dependent on someone else's mood. The law was designed to stop street nuisances in Victorian London, but it's never been repealed, which means every dad who's taken his kids to the park with a kite is one grumpy bystander away from criminal status. This is what happens when you let laws pile up for nearly 2 centuries without ever clearing them out. You end up with a legal system that criminalises childhood activities while serious crimes go unpunished. The Town Police Clauses Act 1847 makes it illegal to keep a pigsty in front of your house if it's a nuisance to passers-by. Fair enough in 1847 when people actually kept pigs in urban areas. But we're not living in agricultural Britain anymore. The law's still active though, which means if you've ever thought about urban pig farming, you'd better keep those pigs round back or you're breaking a law that's older than your great-great-granddad. What's mental is that nobody's bothered to repeal this because technically it could still apply if someone decided to keep pigs in their front garden. So we've got a law on the books designed for a Britain that no longer exists, sitting there waiting for the one nutter who decides to recreate Victorian farm life in suburban Croydon. That's British lawmaking in a nutshell. Never repeal anything, just in case. The same Metropolitan Police Act that banned doormat shaking also banned beating carpets in the street. But here's the twist. Doormats are specifically exempted before 8 a.m. Regular carpets, banned all day, every day. So your doormat gets a morning window, but your lounge carpet is permanently illegal to shake outside. The logic is non-existent, but that's never stopped British lawmakers. This law represented Victorian concerns about street cleanliness, but it survived into an age when we've got vacuum cleaners and professional carpet cleaning. Yet here it sits, technically criminalising anyone who drags their carpet outside for a beating. Every generation keeps these laws around because repealing them would mean admitting previous generations were daft, and we'd rather be criminals than admit that. The Town Police Clauses Act makes it illegal to sing profane or obscene songs in the street. Not threatening songs, not racist songs, just rude ones. So every bloke who stumbled out of the pub singing The Good Ship Venus is technically a criminal. Every stag do that's belted out something inappropriate on the walk home has broken this law. It's been used to nick people too, usually when coppers want to move someone along and need a legal excuse. The problem with laws like this is they're completely subjective. What's obscene to one person is harmless fun to another. But that's exactly why these laws stick around. They give authorities flexible powers to crack down on behaviour they don't like without having to prove actual harm. Every drunk bloke singing his way home is potentially a lawbreaker, and that's how the powers that be prefer it. The Polish potatoes. Order 2004 makes it illegal to import potatoes from Poland. Not cocaine, not weapons, potatoes. It was brought in to stop potato ring rot disease, but it's so specific that it singles out one country and one vegetable. You can import Polish cabbage, carrots, turnips, whatever you fancy, but potatoes are off limits. Meanwhile, we import potatoes from dozens of other countries without a second thought. This law's still active, which means somewhere in British ports, customs officers are on the lookout for illegal Polish spuds. The fact that we've got specific legislation targeting one European country's root vegetables, while actual smuggling continues unabated, shows you where our priorities lie. It's easier to ban Polish potatoes than to fix the actual problems with border security. The Licensing Act 1872 makes it illegal to be drunk in charge of cattle on a highway. Not driving cattle while drunk, just being in charge of them. So if you're walking your cow home after a few pints, you're breaking the law. It's lumped in with being drunk in charge of horses, carriages, and steam engines, which tells you exactly how old this law is. We've still got steam engine provisions on the books in the age of electric cars. The law gets trotted out occasionally when police want to make a point, usually in rural areas where people still move livestock on public roads. But it exists primarily as a curiosity, a reminder that British law is built on centuries of accumulated rules that nobody's bothered to clean up. Every farmer who's had a pint at the local before moving his herd is technically a criminal, and that's exactly how Parliament likes it. This one's a myth that's become so widespread people believe it's true, but it perfectly captures British legal absurdity. So many people think it's illegal to slice a boiled egg with the wrong end up that it might as well be. The confusion comes from the fact that we do have laws governing all sorts of trivial behaviour, so an egg slicing law seems perfectly plausible. That's what happens when your statute books are stuffed with Victorian regulations about doormats and planks. The fact that people believe this law exists tells you everything about British legal culture. We've criminalised so much normal behaviour that citizens assume literally anything could be illegal. When you've got laws about salmon handling and doormat shaking, why wouldn't egg slicing be regulated? The joke is that while this particular law is fake, dozens of equally ridiculous real ones fill our legal system. The 1313 statute forbidding bearing of armour makes it illegal to wear armour in Parliament. This law is over 700 years old and still technically active. So if you've ever fancied rocking up to Westminster in full plate armour to watch Prime Minister's questions, you're bang out of order. It made perfect sense in medieval England when armed knights might storm Parliament. But we're not exactly living in Game of Thrones anymore. The reason this law survives is pure British tradition. We keep medieval statutes around because removing them would mean admitting the past was different. So we've got a law designed to prevent armed rebellion during the reign of Edward II, still sitting there in case someone decides to attend Parliament dressed like a crusader. That's Britain. Never change anything, never repeal anything, just let it accumulate until your legal system looks like a hoarder's attic. Here's one that's technically not true, but everyone believes. It's supposedly illegal to die in Parliament because anyone who dies there is entitled to a state funeral. The reality is there's no such law, but Parliament's authorities will do everything possible to declare you died somewhere else. If you keel over on the premises, they'll drag you outside, get you to a hospital, anything to avoid the paperwork and expense of an official parliamentary death. The fact that this myth persists shows how Brits view their institutions. We assume they're so bureaucratic and petty that they criminalise death itself to avoid inconvenience. And honestly, given some of the actual laws on our books, it's not that far-fetched. We've criminalised doormat shaking and plank carrying. Banning death is hardly a stretch. The myth survives because it feels true, and that's damning enough. It's supposedly illegal to place a stamp bearing the monarch's head upside down, as it constitutes treason. This is another myth, but like the boiled egg law, it reveals something true about British legal culture. We've got so many archaic rules about respect for the crown that people assume literally anything could be treason. And historically, they wouldn't be wrong. Britain's got centuries of laws protecting royal dignity from everything from insults to gestures. While you won't actually be nicked for an upside-down stamp, the fact that people believe you could be speaks volumes. We've got laws about salmon handling and doormat times, so why wouldn't stamp orientation be regulated? The real crime isn't the upside-down stamp. It's that our legal system is so cluttered with absurdities that citizens can't tell real laws from fake ones. The Town Police Clauses Act 1847 makes it illegal to willfully and wantonly disturb any inhabitant by pulling or ringing any doorbell or knocking at any door without lawful excuse. So every kid who's played knockdown ginger is technically a criminal. Every time someone's rung a doorbell and legged it, they've broken a law that's been on the books for 178 years. It's called knock and run now, but the law doesn't care what you call it. It's still illegal. This law actually gets enforced occasionally when neighbours get into disputes or when coppers want to teach kids a lesson. But mostly it sits there as another example of how British law criminalises childhood itself. Every generation of British kids has committed this crime, and every generation of adults has pretended to be shocked by it. The law survives because nobody wants to be the MP who stands up to defend doorbell harassment. The same Metropolitan Police Act that's given us half this list also makes it illegal to slide on ice or snow if it causes common danger. So every kid who's slid down an icy path, every teenager who's skidded across a frozen puddle, has technically broken the law. Not if they hurt someone, just if it might cause danger. The law's so vague that it could apply to literally anyone playing in winter weather. This represents British lawmaking at its most paranoid, creating crimes based not on actual harm, but on theoretical risk. Every snowball fight, every bit of winter fun could technically land you in bother if some copper decides you're causing potential danger. The law survives because, like most Victorian regulations, it's easier to keep it and ignore it than to repeal it and admit it was always ridiculous. Britain's one of the only countries in the world that requires a licence to own a television. Not to drive, not to carry a weapon, to watch telly. The TV licensing regime backs this up with threatening letters, enforcement officers, and court prosecutions. If you watch live broadcast television, or BBC iPlayer without paying your £169.50 annual fee, you're breaking the law. No other major country does this. Americans, Europeans, Australians, they all watch TV without needing government permission. The TV licence represents British authority at its most intrusive, demanding payment for a service you might not even want, backed by legal threats and criminal penalties. Thousands of people end up with criminal records each year for not paying to watch telly. The BBC defends it as necessary for public broadcasting, but really it's a tax by another name. Enforced through criminalisation, every time you watch TV without paying, you're technically a criminal in a way that wouldn't apply anywhere else. The Violent Crime Reduction Act 2006 and the Policing and Crime Act 2017 made it illegal to manufacture, import, or sell realistic imitation firearms. So those toy guns you played with as a kid? Illegal now. Want to buy a realistic replica for collecting or display? Can't do it. Britain's decided that toy guns are such a threat that they need to be banned entirely, while actual gun crime committed with real weapons continues in major cities. This law represents modern British governance, bans something symbolic, while the actual problem goes unaddressed. Every kid who grew up playing cowboys and Indians or army men is now living in a country where the toys they played with are classified as illegal weapons. Meanwhile, criminals have no trouble getting real guns. The law makes politicians feel like they've done something about violence while achieving absolutely nothing except criminalising toys. In Britain, pepper spray is classified as a prohibited weapon under the Firearms Act 1968. So if you're worried about walking home alone at night and you buy some pepper spray for protection, you're committing a crime that carries up to 10 years in prison, not for using it, not for threatening anyone with it, just for having it. Meanwhile, attackers face minimal consequences if they're caught. Britain's decided that your right to defend yourself is less important than the state's monopoly on force. This law's unique to Britain and a handful of other countries. Most of the world allows pepper spray for self-defense. But here, defending yourself makes you a criminal. Women who carry it in their handbags, men who keep it in their cars, anyone who wants basic protection, they're all lawbreakers. The message is clear. You're supposed to be a victim and wait for police who might arrive in an hour. Your safety matters less than legal principle, and that's exactly how the authorities want it. While not completely illegal, collecting rainwater can violate water abstraction laws if done on a large scale without proper licensing. The Environment Agency regulates water collection, and if you're collecting significant amounts, say for agricultural or commercial use, you could be breaking abstraction laws designed to protect water resources. So that innocuous water butt in your garden? Fine, but scale it up and you're potentially committing an environmental crime for collecting water that falls from the sky. This represents the British regulatory mindset. Everything requires permission. Everything needs a license. Nothing can be done without government oversight. In a country where it rains constantly, we've managed to regulate the collection of rainwater. Other countries let you harvest rainwater freely, but Britain's decided that rain belongs to the state until proven otherwise. Every time it buckets down, remember that catching it might require official approval. From handling salmon suspiciously to shaking your doormat at the wrong time, Britain's got laws that would make a satirist blush. 25 things that are perfectly legal in the rest of the world, but will technically land you in bother here. Some are Victorian relics, some are modern madness, but they all share one thing. They show how Britain's created a legal system that criminalises normal life while letting real problems go unsolved. If you've ever wondered why this country feels over-regulated and under-policed, these laws are your answer. Hit subscribe and watch the next video to see what else we've banned that the rest of the world allows. Cheers for watching.